Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm reviewing All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir, and I gave this book a solid 4 out of 5. Today, my Booktuber Shoutout goes out to Sarah Caroline. I came across her channel because after finishing this book a few days ago, I wanted to see what other people thought about this book as well in preparation for the in-person or over Zoom book club that I'm doing later today with my coworkers. And I want to see what other people thought because from what I've talked about my coworkers, it seemed kind of divisive. So I will link Sarah's specific review for this book to her channel down below if you want to show her some support. And as always, if you're watching this video, I'll always appreciate if you subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up, and also leave a comment down below if you have read this book so I can see what you thought down below. This book was published last year in 2022, and the genre is young adult fiction. I will also specify that I feel like the subgenre of this book is coming of age and also a representation of people in the Pakistani Muslim American community. A bit about the author Sabaa Tahir. So she was born in the UK. Her parents had immigrated to UK from Pakistan, and when she was young, her family immigrated to California where she grew up. Similar to the protagonist, Sabaa also grew up in an 18-room motel, and she eventually went to UCLA, where when she went to UCLA, she also interned at Washington Post. She has written other novels as well. One of her series that she's written is a 4-book fantasy series called Ember in the Ashes. She currently now lives in San Francisco with her family. A bit about the premise of the book and the characters. So we start the book with Misbah, and we kind of learn that she was kind of in an arranged marriage in Pakistan, and then she moved to America, where her and her husband acquire a motel where they call the Clouds Rest Inn. And then that's the first timeline of Misbah in Pakistan, where she met her husband, and then coming to America. And the second timeline is like present day, where she now has a son called Salahuddin, or Sal for short, and he is in his like final year of high school, and he has potential to be a great writer, but he seems to be struggling because his mom's health isn't the best. His mom is Misbah, who has kidney disease, and then also Salahuddin has a childhood best friend, Noor, who is also a Pakistani American. And the book starts with them having like just a bit after a falling out they've had, but we don't know what really contributed to the falling out between Salahuddin and Noor, who are childhood best friends. And so Salahuddin, he is a child of immigrants that came from Pakistan, and Noor is actually a child of Pakistani, not immigrants, because when she was in Pakistan, her whole family and her experienced an earthquake where everyone died except her. She was 6 years old, and her uncle Chachu came to rescue her and then moved her to America. However, Chachu, who's also Pakistani, rejects all Pakistani culture and also Muslim faith. So Noor is kind of stuck between two cultures because she has this calling to know her culture and know her religion. However, the uncle that raises her rejects all of it. Noor is very smart and she applies to a bunch of universities, including UCLA, but Chachu does not want her to go to university and wants her to just work at her liquor store, at his liquor store, and also just stay in that town that she grew up in with him. This book is very interesting because it talks about all the conflict that arises between embracing one's culture, the trauma that one has experienced in their childhood that carries on into their teenagehood, their adulthood, and how they are interwoven. I don't want to get too much into the story of the book because I feel like it will spoil quite a bit. But as I mentioned, all these characters, you can see they're very complicated characters. Salahuddin, father, who is Misbah's husband, Abu, also is an alcoholic, which is interesting because in Muslim faith, drinking is kind of frowned upon. So this book kind of talks about all these characters who, were given kind of like a backward step in life, or not a head start in life, and how they kind of struggle and everything like that. So it's a very interesting book, and like for young adults book, it's very heavy, but I still felt it was very enjoyable to read and also very important to read because it was a slice of Pakistani Muslim young American life that I don't have exposure to as like a 30-year, mid-30s Canadian woman. Common themes I found in the book is the idea of family. You know, your family isn't just your blood family, but also who is there to support you. So in Muslim culture, there is a, I don't know if it's the same as a pastor or a rabbi, but I think similar, called an imam or aman. So when Noor and Salahuddin go through their struggles, there is a local aman who is there to take care of them and to guide them, and you know, kind of becomes their family. So I think that's really important in this Muslim faith, which I found permeated throughout the book. Other common themes I found throughout this book is the idea of grief, the idea of struggle. Minor spoiler, but it's very early in the book, is that Misbah dies from her kidney disease, and that kind of like ripples everything else that happens in the plot. So when Misbah dies, everyone deals with grief in different ways. Salahuddin has to take over the motel because his father Abu is an alcoholic. Noor steps in because Misbah was kind of like her second mom. The idea of like, is it okay to fail? If you fail, asking for help because you have the support, and also the idea of love and the power of being able to forgive, because we're all humans and we make mistakes, and sometimes we don't have time to, you know, apologize or make amends. So the idea of the person to that was hurt to be able to forgive. Things I didn't like about this book was, if you've watched my reviews, I did not like the ending so much. Not so much the ending itself, but the pace the ending happened. It just seemed really succinct, and I felt like the author was running out of pages or felt like a rush to wrap it up. But I think I would have liked it better if the ending was a bit fleshed out, so I can see how it came to be more realistically than, oh, the book's ending, let's wrap it all up, you know, all that kind of stuff. Um, and the other thing that was like hard for me to read and I didn't like, but I get it, it's the style, is that every character like just couldn't catch a break. It was just one thing after the other, and I was just like, oh my god, like I know like I live a very privileged life where my life is pretty good, and you know, I'm not in a life where I'd never be able to catch a break, but like it was just really hard to read. I just kind of wish that sometimes there were just like moments of happiness for these characters. What I did like though, as I mentioned about the premise of the book, was I like how there were two different timelines from the past and present day, and also perspectives of three different characters. So this book is told in first person in Salahuddin, Noor, and also Misbah's point of view. So I really enjoyed that, because things as they were revealed, if you had read carefully in the previous chapters, the clues were always there, but they weren't obvious. So I kind of like how you came to realize things, and once you realize it, you're like, oh, it actually was there. Like, how did I miss it? So I really enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed the interpersonal relationships in this book. I mean, I feel that's a given in most books I read. That's the reason why plot and character development is driven, and I really love the power of culture and religion that can bring people and help people. Even if you're an atheist yourself, I'm personally agnostic. I respect all religions. I think, you know, religion can be very powerful and bring people and build a community together. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 4.55 out of 5, which is super high. I'll start with the bad reviews. People didn't like it because I think, you know, it's a pretty heavy book, as I mentioned before, so you have to be in the right headspace for it. I would just want to mention some trigger warnings right now: drug and alcohol addiction, sexual assault, physical abuse, Islamophobia, racism, death, law enforcement. So I think if you decide to read this book, just know that there's all these topics that are very explicit in this book, so FYI. People also felt, because of all the trigger warnings I mentioned earlier just now, they felt there were too many issues compounded into one book, and the characters were just given these issues or trauma, but they didn't give enough backstory to how they came to be, and in that way they felt the characters were flat, which I thought was interesting, because I felt like there was enough context clues and background to show you why the characters were the way they were. So I kind of like don't really agree with these bad reviews, but I can respect it and I can see it, because the book is quite short, so I guess it could be like a longer book. The good reviews is people, again, like me, love the interwoven journeys of all the characters, especially Misbah from Pakistan to America, and how she had that like immigrant story of like owning a motel and building a business. People also love the representation of Pakistani in America and also Muslim culture in America, and felt the book was well portrayed, as the people who wrote these reviews were Pakistani American or Muslim American themselves. Now I'll share how this book made me feel, because one thing I like to ask people is how a book made them feel. Because if you ask me a week, a year, 5 years from now, I probably won't remember exactly what a book was about, but I'll also remember how it made me feel. So this book, as the title of the book is called All My Rage, it made me feel in a rage, not in a bad way, but in a good way. It made me think about these characters, Noor and Salahuddin. They are only teenagers, and now as like a well-adjusted adult in my mid-30s, I obviously don't feel rage at all, because I can manage my emotions quite well and prepare for a situation. But it really brought me back to when I was young, and how you had rage and how you weren't able to contain it as a teenager. Sometimes it could be irrational, but it didn't matter because it was how you felt. And the way that the author wrote Nora's rage, I could really relate to when I was a teenager. So it brought me back to my like rage days as a teenager. Oh, I also forgot a section where I say why I think you should read this book. I think you should read this book if you want to have exposure to representation of Pakistani Muslim American young adult, because for me it was very eye-opening, as I don't have any exposure to this diaspora yet. Thank you for watching till the end of my book review. Again, if you're watching till the end, I'll also appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.